The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, surrounded by two bright suns. Inside the massive hall, representatives from 57 different alien species sat in their designated seats. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed with strange lights. At the far end of the curved table sat the humans, quiet and watchful as always. Jiwan adjusted her uniform and glanced at Daehyun beside her. Her fellow human diplomat looked relaxed, his hands folded on the table. They had been coming to these council meetings for years now. Usually nothing important happened. The aliens talked about trade routes, mining rights, and border disputes. Boring stuff that took hours to resolve. Today felt different. The High Chancellor, a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis with 6 arms, tapped his staff on the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber. Everyone fell silent. The council recognizes War Marshal Kront of the Graythan Empire, the Chancellor announced. A massive reptilian figure stood up. Kront was nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick green scales. His yellow eyes scanned the room with obvious pride. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like thunder. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Kront began, "I come before you today with grave news. The Graythan Empire has observed humanity's expansion with growing concern. They claim to be peaceful, yet they spread to system after system. They build colonies on worlds that should belong to others. They take resources without asking permission." Jiwan felt her jaw tighten. She kept her face neutral. Kront continued. "The humans registered with this council as a minor power. They claim to have only 50 warships, yet they act like they own the galaxy. This disrespect cannot stand. Therefore, the Graythan Empire has decided to teach them a lesson. We will attack their homeworld. We will invade Earth." The chamber erupted. Aliens whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. Some looked shocked. Others nodded in agreement. A few glanced at the human delegates with what might have been pity. Jiwan noticed that not a single species stood up to object. Not one voice spoke in humanity's defense. They were alone, just as they had always been. The Chancellor tapped his staff again. "This is a serious declaration. War Marshal Kront, you understand that attacking a council member world is a grave action?" "We do," Kront replied. "But the Graythan Empire has 500 warships. The humans have 50. The math is simple. They will surrender quickly and peace will be restored. They will learn their place in the galactic order." More murmurs filled the room. 500 ships against 50 seemed like a massacre waiting to happen. Several alien delegates actually laughed. The sound made Daehyun's eye twitch, but he stayed silent. The Chancellor looked at Jiwan. "Counselor Jiwan, you represent humanity. Do you have a response?" Jiwan stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. She was small compared to most of the aliens present, barely 5.5 feet tall. But when she smiled, something in that expression made a few of the closer delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Thank you, High Chancellor," she said calmly. "My fellow human, Ambassador Daehyun, and I would like to request a 48-hour delay before any vote is taken on this matter." "A delay?" Kront laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "What difference will 2 days make? Are you hoping to beg other species to help you? Look around, human. No one will stand with you." Jiwan's smile didn't change. "We're not asking for help, War Marshal. We simply want time to send a message home. Our people deserve to know what's coming. Surely even the mighty Graythan Empire can grant us that small courtesy." The Chancellor considered this. "A reasonable request. The Council will vote in 48 hours. War Marshal Kront, I assume your fleet is not yet in position?" "They will be ready when the vote concludes," Kront confirmed. "We will give the humans time to prepare their surrender." The meeting continued for another hour, but nothing else important was discussed. When it finally ended, Jiwan and Daehyun walked back to the human quarters in silence. Only when the door sealed behind them did Daehyun speak. "They have no idea, do they?" he asked quietly. Jiwan walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "None at all. The Graythans think they're facing 50 ships. They've never asked the right questions. They've never wondered why we only patrol with 50 vessels. They've never thought about what might be waiting at home. Should we warn them?" Daehyun asked. Jiwan turned to face him. Her expression was hard now, all traces of the diplomatic smile gone. "We've tried to be friendly. We've followed every rule. We've been patient with their insults and their condescension. For 12 years, Daehyun. 12 years of being treated like primitives who got lucky enough to build a few spaceships. She walked to her desk and pulled up a holographic display. Numbers and ship classifications filled the air. When we registered with the council, they asked how many ships we had in active patrol rotation. We answered honestly, 50. They never asked about home defense. They never asked about reserves. They never asked about manufacturing capacity. Daehyun studied the display. Admiral Minho is going to have a field day with this. Send the message, Ji-won said. Tell Minho that the Grathens are coming with 500 ships. Tell him the council has abandoned us. And tell him, she paused, that cold smile returning. Tell him to make it educational. Back in the council chamber, War Marshal Krant celebrated with his advisors. They drank fermented liquids from their home world and boasted about the easy victory ahead. 500 against 50, one advisor laughed. The humans will surrender the moment they see our fleet. Perhaps we won't even need to fire a shot, another added. They'll hand over their colonies just to save their precious Earth. Krant nodded, but something nagged at him. The human counselor's reaction had been strange. Most species, when faced with overwhelming force, showed fear. They begged. They offered bribes. They looked for any way out, but Ji-won had just smiled. He pushed the thought away. Humans were known for their stubbornness. She was probably just trying to maintain dignity in front of the other species. In a few weeks, when his fleet arrived at Earth, she would understand the reality of her situation. Across the station, in different quarters, other alien delegates discussed the upcoming conflict. Most felt the humans had been too aggressive in their expansion. A few felt sorry for them but weren't willing to risk Grathan anger by speaking up. All of them agreed on one thing. The war would be over quickly. Only one species remained silent on the matter. The Centaurians, an ancient race that rarely spoke in council meetings, watched and waited. Their delegate, an elderly being with silver skin, had noticed what Krant had not. The human counselor hadn't just smiled. She had smiled like someone who knew a secret. A very big secret. The Centaurian delegate made a private note to watch the battle reports very carefully. In their long history, they had learned that the most dangerous beings in the universe were not the ones who threatened loudly. They were the ones who smiled quietly while others made mistakes. The 48-hour countdown began. Messages flew through space at faster-than-light speeds. The Grathan fleet began moving toward Sol system. And on Earth, in the command center of the Global Defense Network, Admiral Minho received his orders and began to laugh. The Grathan fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal insects. 500 warships, each one the size of a city block, traveled in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed under the light of distant stars. Inside the flagship, War Marshal Krant stood on the command bridge, watching the view screen with satisfaction. Status report, he ordered. We are 3 days from the Sol system. War Marshal, his navigation officer replied. Our scouts report minimal human presence. They've detected the 50 registered vessels spread across their colonies. Nothing near their homeworld, Krant nodded. Exactly as expected. The humans are overconfident. They think their council membership protects them. Soon they'll learn otherwise. What Krant didn't know was that his scouts were being watched. 3,000 miles behind his fleet, a small human ship drifted silently through space. The vessel was painted black and equipped with technology that bent sensor waves around it like water flowing around a rock. Inside the cramped cockpit, Captain Hyejin ate a rice ball and monitored the Grathan communications. Day 3 of following these guys, she said into her recorder. Still haven't spotted us. Their sensor technology is about 50 years behind ours. Maybe more. They're scanning actively, which just makes them easier to track. It's like they're shouting in a dark room and wondering why nobody answers. Hyejin had been shadowing the Grathan fleet since they left their home system. Her ship, the Silent Arrow, was one of Earth's newest stealth reconnaissance vessels. The Grathans had no idea she existed. They had no idea that their every communication was being intercepted, decoded, and sent back to Earth. She took another bite of her rice ball and smiled. Admiral Minho is going to love this. They're not even running battle drills. They think this is going to be a parade, not a fight. On Earth, inside a massive underground facility beneath the Canadian Rockies, Admiral Minho studied the incoming data. The command center hummed with activity. Hundreds of officers sat at their stations monitoring screens that showed every corner of the Sol system. Lieutenant Soman approached with a data tablet. Sir, we've received Captain Hyejin's latest report. The Grathan fleet is maintaining course, no deviations. They'll reach the asteroid belt in 72 hours. And they still haven't detected her? Minho asked. Not even close, sir. Their scanners can't penetrate our stealth coding. Minho allowed himself a small smile. Good, what about our defensive positions? Soman tapped the tablet, bringing up a holographic display of the Sol system. Red dots appeared throughout the asteroid belt, around Mars and in orbit near Earth. Thousands of red dots. All defense platforms are online and ready, Soman reported. 2,000 automated stations, 15,000 combat drones, and 800 manned warships. The drones are hidden inside hollowed asteroids. The platforms are running cold, no emissions. The Grathans won't see them until we want them to. And the shipyards? Still broadcasting civilian signals, sir. As far as any scanner can tell, they're just mining stations and habitats. Minho nodded. The massive shipyards around Jupiter had been disguised as civilian facilities for years. It was surprisingly easy to fool people who didn't look too closely. A shipyard and a mining station looked very similar on scanners. The difference was what they built. What about the decoy fleet? Minho asked. The 50 registered vessels are maintaining their patrol routes. They're nowhere near Earth, just as the Grathans expect. Minho walked to the main view screen where a real-time map of the Sol system glowed. Little blue icons represented Earth's true defensive capability. There were so many of them that parts of the map looked solid blue. You know what the funny thing is, Soman? Minho said quietly. We didn't even lie to them. When the Galactic Council asked us to register our military, they asked very specific questions. How many ships do we have in active patrol rotation? 50, that's true. We rotate crews through those 50 vessels and keep them on patrol duty. They never asked about home defense. They never asked about reserve fleets. They never asked how many ships we could build in a month. Why didn't they ask, sir? Because they didn't think we mattered, Minho replied. To them, we're primitives who barely figured out faster than light travel. They can't imagine us having real military strength, so they see what they expect to see. Soman looked at the map. They're going to be very surprised. Yes, Minho agreed. Yes, they are. The Grathan fleet crossed into the Sol system 2 days later. War Marshal Krant stood at attention as his ships emerged from faster-than-light travel near the orbit of Neptune. Deploy scouts, he ordered. I want a full scan of the system. Locate all human vessels. The scout ships spread out, their sensors reaching across millions of miles. Data began flowing back to the flagship. War Marshal, the sensor officer called out. We're detecting the 50 registered human vessels. They're exactly where our intelligence said they would be, scattered across the system at their colony locations. Any sign of additional ships? Negative, sir. We're reading some civilian traffic near Earth. Mining vessels, transport ships, that sort of thing. Nothing military. Krant felt a surge of satisfaction. Then we proceed as planned. Set course for Earth, maximum speed. The fleet advanced deeper into the Sol system. They passed Neptune, then Uranus. Saturn's rings glowed gold in the distance. Still, they encountered no resistance. This is too easy, one of Krant's advisors muttered. Where are their defenses? They don't have any, Krant replied. Or rather, they have 50 ships that are nowhere near home. They thought their council membership would protect them. They were wrong. Behind them, still undetected, Captain Hyejin watched the Grathan fleet advance. She had followed them all the way to Earth. Now she positioned her ship carefully, waiting for the signal to strike. Come on, she whispered. Just a little further. The Grathan fleet reached the asteroid belt. Millions of rocks drifted in the space between Mars and Jupiter, ranging from pebbles to mountains. The fleet slowed down, navigating carefully through the debris field. War Marshal, the sensor officer said, I'm picking up some strange readings in the asteroid belt. Metallic signatures. They might be mining equipment. Probably automated miners, Krant said dismissively. The humans mine these rocks for resources. Ignore them. It was the last peaceful moment War Marshal Krant would ever have. Admiral Minho sat in his command chair on Earth, watching the Grathan fleet navigate through the asteroid belt. They were exactly where he wanted them, surrounded by millions of rocks, perfect cover for what came next. He opened a communication channel. All units, this is Admiral Minho. The enemy has entered the engagement zone. Weapons free. I repeat, weapons free. Show them what they're really dealing with. Across the Sol system, thousands of dormant systems came to life. Inside hollow asteroids, combat drones activated their engines. Defense platforms that had been running cold suddenly blazed with power. The civilian stations around Jupiter dropped their disguises and revealed weapons arrays that could crack moons. On every scanner in the Graythan fleet, the displays suddenly lit up like fireworks. Where there had been empty space, there were now thousands of contacts. Where there had been civilian stations, there were now military installations. War Marshal Krant stared at his screen in disbelief. That's not possible. Where did they all come from? His sensor officer's voice shook. Sir, I'm counting over 2,000 defense platforms, at least 15,000 smaller vessels. And there are 800 large warships moving into position. They're surrounding us. Krant felt his blood run cold. 800? But the humans only registered 50 ships. Behind his fleet, Captain Hyajin's stealth ship finally decloaked. She had been waiting for this moment. Her weapons came online, targeting systems locked onto the Graythan engines. Surprise, she said, and pressed the firing button. The first salvo from Captain Hyajin's ship struck 3 Graythan vessels before they even knew they were under attack. Her electromagnetic pulse weapons fried their sensor arrays and left them blind. The massive warships drifted helplessly, their crews scrambling to understand what had just happened. Direct hits, Hyajin reported calmly. 3 enemy vessels disabled, breaking off and repositioning. Her small ship darted away, disappearing back into the darkness of space. The Graythans fired blindly at where she had been, but their shots hit nothing but empty vacuum. All around the asteroid belt, Commander Taeyong watched his displays light up with targets. He sat in a control center on Mars, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Each movement commanded hundreds of combat drones spread throughout the system. Swarm groups 1 through 50. Execute attack pattern Delta, he ordered. From within hollowed-out asteroids, sleek combat drones emerged like angry hornets. They were small, each one barely the size of a car, but they moved with incredible speed and precision. They worked in coordinated groups, surrounding individual Graythan ships and attacking from every angle at once. The Graythans had powerful shields, designed to stop large weapons fire. But the drones used different tactics. They fired thousands of small projectiles, each one individually weak but collectively overwhelming. It was like being attacked by a sandstorm that could think. Shield integrity dropping on multiple vessels, a Graythan officer reported frantically. These small craft are everywhere. We can't target them all. War Marshal Krant gripped his command chair. Focus fire on the larger vessels. Ignore the small ones. Sir, what larger vessels? We're only detecting small craft and defense platforms. Then destroy the platforms. The Graythan fleet tried to reorganize. They had trained for traditional naval combat, big ships against big ships. This swarm tactics approach was something entirely different. Every time they locked onto a target, it would slip behind an asteroid or another disabled Graythan ship. Admiral Minho watched the battle unfold on his displays. The Graythan formation was breaking apart. Ships collided with each other trying to avoid drone swarms. Some attempted to retreat but found their paths blocked. Bring up the Jupiter stations, Minho ordered. Lieutenant Soman input the commands. Around Jupiter's orbit, 5 massive stations that had been broadcasting as civilian mining operations suddenly transformed. Huge panels slid away, revealing weapons that humanity had spent decades developing. Railguns, designed originally for asteroid mining, now turned toward military targets. Jupiter stations firing, Soman announced. The railguns launched projectiles at incredible speeds. They didn't use explosives or energy weapons. Just solid metal slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. When those slugs hit Graythan shields, they punched through like paper. 3 Graythan cruisers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. What are they shooting at us? A Graythan weapons officer screamed. Solid projectiles, sir. Moving at 0.2 light speed. Our shields can't stop them. Krant's mind raced. This was supposed to be simple. 500 advanced warships against 50 primitive vessels. Instead, he was watching his fleet get torn apart by technology that shouldn't exist. The humans weren't supposed to be this advanced. They weren't supposed to have these numbers. They weren't supposed to be winning. Full retreat, he ordered. All ships withdraw from the system immediately. The Graythan vessels tried to turn around, but they had a problem. They had entered the asteroid belt in a compact formation, perfect for intimidation. Now that same formation trapped them. Ships blocked each other's escape routes, and every moment they spent trying to retreat, more drones swarmed around them and more railgun projectiles found their targets. Sir, we can't get clear, his navigation officer reported. There are human ships behind us now. Krant's blood ran colder. Behind us? When did they get behind us? The answer appeared on his view screen. Admiral Minho's main fleet, 800 warships that the Grathans had no idea existed, emerged from behind Luna. They had been hiding in Earth's moon's shadow, their power systems completely shut down. Now they lit up like a constellation of angry stars. These weren't small drones or defense platforms. These were full-sized warships, each one comparable to a Grathan vessel. But they were newer, faster, and their crews had trained for this exact scenario for years. "This is Admiral Minho of Earth's Defense Fleet," a voice boomed across all channels. "Grathan vessels you came here to conquer. Instead, you're going to learn why nobody else has tried. You are completely surrounded. Your shields are failing. Your formation is broken. I'm giving you one chance to surrender. Take it." War Marshal Kront wanted to rage, to fight, to refuse. But he looked at his displays and saw the truth. In 43 minutes of combat, he had lost over 400 ships. 400. Most were disabled rather than destroyed, but they were out of the fight. The remaining vessels were all damaged, their shields weakening under relentless attacks. He had led 500 warships into this system. He would be lucky to leave with 50. "Order all ships to stand down," Kront said quietly. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. "Surrender." The Grathan fleet stopped fighting. One by one, their weapons powered down and their shields dropped. Human ships moved in carefully, taking control of the disabled vessels. Captain Heejin flew her stealth ship past the Grathan flagship. She had been awake for 3 days straight, following their fleet, feeding intelligence to Earth, and then fighting in the battle. She was exhausted but exhilarated. "This is Silent Arrow to Fleet Command," she reported. "All enemy vessels have ceased resistance. We control the battle space." "Good work, Captain," Minho replied. "Return to base for debriefing. You've earned some rest." "Respectfully, sir, I'm too excited to sleep." "Did we really just do that?" Minho smiled. "We did. And now the entire galaxy is going to know about it." On the Grathan flagship, War Marshal Kront sat in his chair and stared at nothing. His career was over. His reputation destroyed. He had promised his emperor a quick victory, and instead delivered a humiliating defeat. But worse than his personal failure was the realization of what it meant. The humans weren't weak. They had never been weak. They had simply let everyone believe they were. And now that the truth was revealed, the entire balance of galactic power had shifted. A human officer appeared on his view screen. It was Admiral Minho himself. "War Marshal Kront," Minho said. His tone was neutral, neither gloating nor sympathetic. "Your crews will be treated well. We'll provide medical care for the injured and proper facilities for your prisoners. In a few weeks, once the council sorts out the politics, you'll probably all go home." "You planned this," Kront said bitterly. "All of it. You wanted us to attack." "No," Minho replied firmly. "We didn't want this. We hoped that by keeping a low profile we could avoid conflicts. We thought if we didn't appear threatening, nobody would threaten us. But we're not fools, Kront. We knew that eventually someone would test us, so we prepared. We built defenses. We trained. We made sure that if peace failed, we could protect ourselves. You deceived the council. We answered every question honestly. The council asked about active patrol vessels. We told them we had 50. They never asked about home defense. They never asked about manufacturing capacity. They never asked about reserves. They made assumptions, and those assumptions were wrong." Minho leaned forward slightly. "Here's what I want you to understand, Kront. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want an empire. We just want to be left alone to live our lives and explore the galaxy in peace. But if someone forces us to fight, we will fight. And as you've just discovered, we're very good at it." The transmission ended. Kront sat in the darkness of his disabled ship and contemplated his future. It was not a pleasant thought. Back on Earth, in the command center, the staff was celebrating. Cheers echoed through the halls. Someone had broken out champagne. But Admiral Minho stood quietly at his window, looking up at the stars. Lieutenant Soman approached him. "Sir, shouldn't you be celebrating?" "We just won an impossible victory." "We won a battle," Minho corrected. "Now comes the harder part. The entire Galactic Council just watched us defeat a fleet 5 times our registered size. They're going to have questions. A lot of questions. And we're going to have to answer them." "Are you worried about consequences?" Minho thought about that. "No, I'm worried about what comes next. For years we've been ignored by the galaxy, treated like children playing with toys we don't understand. That ends now. Now they know we're strong, and strong nations don't get left alone. They get tested. They get challenged. They get dragged into conflicts they'd rather avoid. He turned to face Soman. We wanted to be small and insignificant, safe in our corner of space. But the War Marshal was right about one thing. We've been expanding. We've been taking systems and resources. At some point, that was going to cause problems. Maybe it's better that those problems start now when we're ready, rather than later when we might not be. So what do? We tell the truth, Minho said simply. All of it. Every ship, every weapon, every defense platform. We show the Council exactly what we have, and then we make it very clear that we'll use it all to defend ourselves. The emergency council session was called exactly 24 hours after the battle. The massive chamber that usually echoed with casual debate now buzzed with urgent whispers. Every species representative was present. Nobody wanted to miss this. Counselor Jiwan walked into the chamber beside Ambassador Daehyun. Every eye tracked them as they moved to their seats. The whispers grew louder. Some aliens looked frightened. Others looked angry. A few seemed impressed. Jiwan noticed that the seats closest to the human section were now empty. Species that had sat near them for years had suddenly decided to sit elsewhere. She found it amusing. Yesterday they had ignored humanity. Today they feared it. The High Chancellor struck his staff on the floor. This emergency session is now in order. We gather to discuss the recent conflict between the Grathan Empire and Earth. Ambassador Daehyun, Counselor Jiwan, you requested this session. You may speak. Daehyun stood first. He projected a holographic display into the center of the chamber. Battle footage began to play. The aliens watched in silence as the human defensive grid revealed itself. As drones swarmed Grathan vessels, as railgun projectiles tore through shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. The footage ran for 10 minutes. When it ended, the chamber remained silent. This is the complete record of the battle, Daehyun said calmly. As you can see, the Grathan fleet of 500 vessels was defeated in 43 minutes. 413 ships were disabled or destroyed. 87 surrendered. Human casualties were 12 injured, none killed. We have treated all Grathan prisoners with respect and provided medical care for their wounded. A reptilian delegate from the Vraxian Confederacy stood up. This is impossible. Our intelligence said you only had 50 ships. Where did all those others come from? Counselor Yunji, the junior human diplomat, stood next. She was young, barely 30, but she had a sharp mind and sharper tongue. They came from Earth. Where else would they come from? But you registered only 50 vessels with this council. The Vraxian protested. That's correct, Yunji replied. She brought up another holographic display. This one showed the council's military registration form from 12 years ago. Question 7. How many vessels do you maintain in active patrol rotation? We answered 50. That answer was true then, and it's true now. We rotate crews through 50 ships that patrol our territory. But you didn't mention these other ships. A delegate with crystalline features spoke up. These thousands of defense platforms and drones. Question 8. Do you maintain defensive installations in your home system? We answered yes. That was also true. Question 9. What is your annual ship production capacity? We answered classified, as was our right under council regulations. Every species is allowed to classify certain military information. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Multiple species tried to speak at once. The Chancellor had to strike his staff 3 times to restore order. You deliberately misled this council, the Vraxian accused. No, Jiwan said firmly, standing beside Yunji. We answered every question accurately. The council made assumptions based on those answers. Those assumptions were wrong. That's not our fault. You could have volunteered additional information, a furry delegate from the Kepler systems argued. Could have, yes. But we weren't required to. Tell me, Counselor. Jiwan turned to face the furry delegate directly. How many reserve vessels does your species maintain? How many defense platforms orbit your homeworld? What is your true military production capacity? The delegate's fur bristled. That information is classified. Exactly, Jiwan said. Just like ours was. The difference is that nobody attacked your homeworld. So your classified military strength remains classified. The Grathans forced us to reveal ours. The High Chancellor tapped his staff thoughtfully. Counselor Jiwan, surely you understand how this looks. For 12 years, you have allowed this council to believe humanity was a minor military power. Now we discover you could have been registered as a Tier 1 power from the beginning. Could we have? G1 asked. Tell me, High Chancellor, what happens when a new species registers as Tier 1? The Chancellor hesitated. An elderly delegate from the Centaurian species spoke up for the first time. Her silver skin seemed to glow softly. They are immediately seen as a threat. Other Tier 1 powers monitor them closely. Trade becomes difficult. Expansion is limited. They are tested frequently through border disputes and proxy conflicts. Thank you, Counselor Vaness, G1 said. We read the same history books you did. We saw what happened to the last 3 species that registered as Tier 1 powers. They spent decades proving they weren't aggressive. They lost colonies to manufactured disputes. They were contained and controlled until they accepted their place in the order. We decided we didn't want that. So you deceived us to avoid scrutiny, the Vraxian said. We minimized our presence to avoid unnecessary conflict, Daehyun corrected. We wanted to explore, trade, and live peacefully. We thought if we appeared small and non-threatening, we would be left alone. We were wrong. The Grathans attacked us anyway. A holographic screen appeared in the center of the chamber. Admiral Minho's face filled the display. The alien delegates murmured. They had expected diplomats, not military commanders. Honored council members, Minho began. I am Admiral Minho, commander of Earth's Home Defense Fleet. I've been asked to testify about humanity's military capabilities. I will be completely honest with you, which is more than some of you have been with each other. That got their attention. The murmuring stopped. Earth maintains 800 active warships, Minho continued. We have 2,000 automated defense platforms in our home system. We operate 15,000 combat drones. We can produce approximately 100 new vessels per year. Our technology is, in many areas, more advanced than most council species, particularly in kinetic weapons, stealth systems, and drone coordination. He paused, letting that sink in. We have shared this information with no one until now. Not because we planned to use it aggressively, but because we built it all for one purpose. To make sure that if anyone attacked Earth, they would regret it. The Grathans attacked. They regretted it. That was the system working as intended. A delegate with tentacles raised several appendages. But why build such a large military if you wanted peace? Because peace doesn't come from being weak, Minho replied. It comes from being strong enough that nobody wants to fight you. We learned that lesson in our own history, long before we reached the stars. The species that survive are not the ones that hope for peace. They're the ones that prepare for war while working for peace. The High Chancellor spoke carefully. Admiral Minho, this council is concerned. Your species has demonstrated capabilities far beyond what we knew. How can we be certain you won't use this strength aggressively? You can't, Minho said bluntly. Just like we can't be certain any of you won't attack us. That's why we built defenses instead of conquest fleets. Our ships are designed to protect our territory, not invade others. Our weapons are powerful but short-ranged. Our strategy is defensive. If we wanted to build an empire, we would have designed our military very differently. G1 stepped forward. The council must vote on a question. Should humanity face sanctions for how we registered our military strength? Before you vote, consider this. We now know that we weren't the only ones who understated our capabilities. She gestured to Yunji, who brought up a new display. In the past 24 hours, 17 different species have quietly updated their military registrations with the council. Apparently, we weren't the only ones who answered the questions accurately but minimally. Some of you doubled your reported fleet sizes. A few tripled them. One species registered 4 times as many vessels as they claimed to have yesterday. The chamber erupted again. Species shouted at each other, accusing and defending. The High Chancellor had to strike his staff repeatedly to restore order. It seems, Ji-won said calmly, that everyone in this chamber has been playing the same game. We were just better at it than most. And now that the truth is revealed, perhaps we can all stop pretending and start being honest with each other. The vote was called. Should humanity face sanctions for deception? The results came quickly. 51 species voted no. 4 abstained. Only 2 voted yes, and one of them was the Grathan Empire. The motion fails, the High Chancellor announced. However, this council cannot simply ignore what has happened. Humanity will be reclassified as a Tier 1 power. Effective immediately. You will have the rights and responsibilities that come with that status. Ji-won bowed slightly. We accept the reclassification. We have one request. Speak. In 3 days, our president, Xianwu, will arrive here in person. He wishes to address the council and discuss how humanity can contribute to galactic peace. We ask that the council grants him that opportunity. The Chancellor nodded. It will be done. This session is adjourned. As the aliens filed out of the chamber, many approached the human delegates. Some offered congratulations. Others offered veiled threats disguised as warnings. A few seemed genuinely interested in establishing better relationships. The Centaurian delegate Vanessa approached G1 last. That was well played, young one. 3 months had passed since the battle. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same as always, but everything else had changed. The human section was no longer isolated at the edge of the room. Their seats had been moved to the inner circle, among the other Tier 1 powers. And today, for the first time, Earth's leader would address the council in person. President Seonwoo stood in the preparation room adjusting his formal jacket. He was 60 years old, his hair more gray than black, but his eyes were sharp and alert. He had spent 40 years in politics, including 12 years as Earth's president. He had been waiting for this moment since humanity first joined the council. Councilor Jiwon entered the room. Mr. President, they're ready for you. How's the mood out there? Seonwoo asked. Mixed. Some are curious. Some are still angry. Most are just trying to figure out how to deal with us now that they know the truth. Seonwoo smiled. Good, confusion is better than certainty. It means they're actually thinking instead of assuming. He paused. Is Admiral Minho here? He arrived an hour ago. He's in the observation gallery with Captain Hyejin and Commander Taeyong. The council wanted our military leadership present. Excellent. Let's not keep them waiting. The chamber doors opened. President Seonwoo walked in, and every alien delegate stood. It was a sign of respect, one that had never been given to human representatives before. Seonwoo bowed slightly to acknowledge the gesture, then took his position at the speaking platform. The High Chancellor struck his staff. The council recognizes President Seonwoo of Earth. You may speak. Seonwoo looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried authority. Honored members of the Galactic Council, thank you for this opportunity. I know many of you have questions about humanity, about our strength, about our intentions, about what kind of species we really are. Today I'm going to answer those questions as honestly as I can. He gestured and a holographic display appeared. It showed Earth rotating slowly in space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, this is our home. One planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. For most of our history, we thought we were alone in the universe. We fought each other over resources, territory, ideologies. We made terrible mistakes. We learned hard lessons. And eventually we learned something important. Peace doesn't happen by accident. It requires strength, wisdom, and the will to choose cooperation over conflict. The image changed, showing human ships spreading through space. When we discovered faster-than-light travel, we were excited to meet other species. We imagined sharing knowledge, forming friendships, building something greater together. But when we found the Galactic Council, we discovered something unexpected. We discovered that the galaxy had already decided what humans were. Primitive, aggressive, dangerous. We were judged before we ever spoke a word. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in acknowledgement. So we made a choice, Seonwoo continued. We decided to keep our heads down, to appear small and unthreatening, to answer questions accurately but minimally. We thought if we seemed weak, we would be left alone. But we also remembered our history. We remembered what happens to weak nations. They get conquered. So while we appeared weak publicly, we built strength privately, not to attack others, but to ensure nobody could attack us. That strategy failed, the Vraxian delegate called out. The Grathans attacked you anyway. Yes, Seonwoo agreed. They did. And in doing so, they taught us an important lesson. There's a difference between appearing peaceful and actually being peaceful. We were trying to appear peaceful by seeming weak. But that just made us look like easy prey. True peace requires a different approach. He changed the image again. Now it showed the aftermath of the battle. Disabled Grathan ships, human vessels providing medical aid. We defeated the Grathan fleet. But look at what we did afterward. We provided medical care for their wounded. We treated prisoners with respect. We didn't execute their leaders or destroy their ships out of revenge. We simply stopped the threat and waited for diplomacy to solve the rest. That's who humans are. We're strong enough to win, but wise enough not to abuse that strength. An insect-like delegate stood. Beautiful words, President Xianwu. But how can we trust them? You deceived this council for 12 years. We withheld information, yes, Xianwu acknowledged. But we never lied. And now we're revealing everything. Our full military strength, our technology levels, our production capacity, everything. We're choosing transparency over deception. We're trusting you with the truth because we want to build something better than what existed before. He paused, letting that sink in. This council has operated on assumptions and half-truths for centuries. Everyone understates their strength to avoid seeming threatening. Everyone keeps secrets. Everyone plays games. The Graythan attack proved that system doesn't work. It leads to miscalculation and conflict. So let's try something different. Let's try honesty. The High Chancellor leaned forward. You propose complete military transparency? I propose a new treaty, Xianwu said. One where every council member honestly reports their military capabilities. Not just active patrol vessels, but reserves, production capacity, defensive installations, everything. No more guessing. No more assumptions. Everyone knows where everyone else stands. That's, a furry delegate began. That's never been done before. Because everyone is afraid, Xianwu said simply. Afraid that if others know how strong or weak they are, it will be used against them. But fear causes more problems than honesty ever could. The Graythans attacked us because they thought we were weak. If they had known the truth, they never would have tried. Honesty prevents wars. Secrets cause them. Ambassador Dahyun stood. Along with this transparency, humanity proposes something else. A joint defense initiative. We will help protect smaller council species who cannot defend themselves, not as conquerors or overlords, but as partners. Why would you do that? The crystalline delegate asked suspiciously. Because it's in our interest, Dahyun replied. If smaller species are safe, they don't need to make desperate alliances with aggressive powers. If everyone feels secure, there's less conflict. And less conflict means more trade, more cooperation, more progress for everyone. Admiral Minho's hologram appeared next to President Xianwu. To demonstrate our commitment, humanity offers to provide defensive technology to any council species that requests it.
Sensor systems.
Drone coordination protocols, shield improvements, not weapons that could be used for conquest, but tools that make invasion more difficult. And what do you want in return? The Vraxian asked. Trade, Minho said simply. Technology exchange. Cultural programs. The same things everyone else wants. We're not looking to dominate anyone. We're looking to be part of something larger than ourselves. Captain Hijin stood in the observation gallery. She watched the council delegates whisper among themselves, debating. Commander Taeyong stood beside her. Do you think they'll accept? Taeyong asked quietly. Some will, Hijin replied. The smaller species who are tired of being pushed around. Maybe some of the mid-tier powers who see an opportunity. The real question is whether enough of them accept to make it work. Below, the High Chancellor called for a preliminary vote. All in favor of discussing humanity's proposals further. Indicate now. Lights began appearing on the voting board. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstain. The final count appeared. 43 yes, 8 no, 6 abstain. The motion passes, the Chancellor announced. We will form a committee to develop these proposals into formal treaties. President Xianwu, humanity is invited to participate in these discussions. Xianwu bowed. We accept with gratitude. But before I conclude, I want to say one more thing. The chamber quieted again. This council was formed 400 years ago to prevent war, Xianwu said. For the most part, it has succeeded. But preventing war isn't the same as creating peace. True peace requires trust. It requires mutual benefit. It requires everyone feeling safe and respected. For 12 years, humanity didn't feel safe or respected here. We felt tolerated at best, despised at worst. That's why we hid our strength. He looked around the chamber again, but hiding doesn't build trust. Secrets don't create friendship. So we're choosing a different path. We're showing you who we really are and hoping you'll do the same. We're offering our strength to protect rather than threaten, and we're asking you to give us a chance to prove that humans can be more than what you assumed we were. We're not perfect, Xianwu continued. We've made mistakes. We'll make more. But we're trying to learn and grow. We're trying to be worthy of our place in this galaxy. We hope you'll help us do that. And in return, we'll help make this council stronger, safer, and more honest than it's ever been. He stepped back from the platform. The chamber remained silent for a moment. Then slowly the Centaurian delegate Vanessa stood and began to clap. The strange sound of her hands meeting echoed through the chamber. Then others joined. Within seconds, more than half the council was applauding. It wasn't unanimous approval. Some delegates sat with their arms crossed, still suspicious. But it was a start. After the session ended, Ji-won found President Xianwu in a corridor, talking with several alien delegates.